Hey, now we're going to talk about brushes. Brushes come in a wide variety of shapes and materials and so forth. Regarding shapes, each one of the different shapes will give you a different effect when you apply the paint to the canvas. One of the more, I'll show you about six or so of the most common brush types. This is a flat, and it is what it sounds like. It's a flat bristle, and it's flat on the end, and those come in a variety of sizes. And then we have the bright, which is similar to the flat, but the bristles are much shorter. They're very good for blending and that sort of thing. Then we have the traditional round, which the bristles come to a fine point at the end, and given how much pressure you put on them, you can have a very thin line or a very fat line. It's all up to the artist. And then we have where did it go? Here it is. The filbert brush, which is like the flat, but instead of the bristles being cut straight across at the end, they are rounded. This gives you a more soft sort of stroke whenever you are applying paint to your work. And then we have the fan brush. This is a natural bristle fan brush, and this is good for trees or grass or that sort of thing. And then we have the angle brush, which I don't use very often, but some people swear by it and are convinced that it gives you a lot more flexibility. That's up to you. And then there are the script brushes. This is one that has very long bristles, and it allows you to make very long, uninterrupted, thin strokes because these long bristles will hold a lot of paint. As far as shape, or handles rather, the handles are either long or they are short. The short handles that you see are usually used for watercolors or temperas or craft painting or something like that, where you have to be very close to your subject. The long handles are typically for acrylics and oils because it allows you to back away from your subject, and with a longer brush you can have more movement and expression. As far as bristles go, there are natural bristles like this fan brush, and then there are synthetic bristles like in this round here. The natural bristles are hairs of different types of animals. There is some of the hair comes from wild pigs, some of it comes from little weasels called sables, some of it comes from squirrels, it comes from badgers, it comes from all sorts of different animals. The synthetic bristles are man-made. They're usually polyester or Taklon or nylon. And the difference is in the thickness of each hair of the bristle. If you look at the hairs of this natural bristle, they're pretty thick. So they will hold a pretty good bit of paint and leave a lot of texture whenever you paint with it. The artificial bristles, like we see here, are much thinner. Typically you'll find watercolor brushes made with these thinner bristles. I prefer the artificial bristles, the synthetic bristles, over the natural bristles, and the reason is I found that I get a little aggressive when I paint sometimes, and because these are organic, they tend to break down a lot faster. As you can see, this is a natural bristle round brush that I've taken around the block a few times, and it's still good for some things, so I keep it around. I'm actually a bristle brush addict. I love paint brushes. So this begs the question, should you buy expensive Italian paintbrushes made with mahogany wood, or are those little plastic brushes from Walmart good enough? And the answer is it's not the brush, it's how you use it. You can make good stuff with cheap brushes, but the cheaper the brush, the quicker it comes apart, I've found. So I wouldn't go bottom of the barrel with my brushes. I would go somewhere in the middle, or you can go on the high end. They do last a long time if you're a gentle painter, and take care of your brushes, which I typically do not do. I do not take good care of my brushes. That's my painter's confession today. I don't take good care of my brushes. Speaking of taking care of your brushes, how do you do that? Well, earlier I did a little demo here on paint, so I've got a brush that needs to be cleaned. If it's pretty dried on and thick, I like to get a wire brush and go through it after I've cleaned it just to get all those little extra bits out. And sometimes you can revive an old brush like this if you've forgotten to clean it or you didn't clean it very well and it's very stiff, which this is. I'm hitting it pretty hard. It has no give. This is what it should be like. It should have a lot of give. And so you can see the difference here. This is a brand new virgin brush. This one has been around the block. This is what you want, not necessarily this. But sometimes you can revive them, clean all that out. So that will lead us into the discussion on solvents, which I'll give you in a separate lecture. But basically, you want to have a container of solvent. I like these El Cheapo brush tubs that you can get from Dick Blick. If you look inside, there are some little ribs here, and when you scrape your brush over those ribs, it lets the solvent get in between the bristles and cleans it out. How clean it is up to you. Some people get obsessively clean about their brushes, and once your paint runs clear through your brush, and this solvent, these mineral spirits are pretty old, so it's not going to be clean, but it should be fairly, that's clean enough to me, even though you can see it, but ideally you wouldn't see any residue once you paint it on there. After you clean out the chunky bits out of your brush, some people will wash it with soap and water to get additional residue out, and then some people will use brush soap after that, which is an oil-based sort of thing, which keep the bristles nice and pliable. I go through brushes so fast that I don't bother. I will just clean it out, let it air dry, and then it's ready to go the next time. There are a few other tools that you can use when you paint, other different ways to apply paint other than brushes. One of them is our friend the palette knife, which we saw earlier. And there are all sorts of different shapes of palette knives, different sizes. One is not necessarily better than the other, but they do give some interesting little effects when you slide them over the canvas, and I'll show you some examples of that in just a minute. You can also try unconventional materials to apply paint. Maybe you choose a wadded up piece of foil. I've done that. Maybe it's plastic wrap. Maybe you get an old broom. Maybe you get an old house painting brush to spread that out. There's no rules. Your only limit is your own imagination. Use whatever you think you can use to apply paint. Van Gogh used beard hairs occasionally, or sticks he would find on the ground. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can still find his beard hairs trapped in the paint of his painting. Fun, huh? Cool. Also, a few other necessary tools you'll need when you're doing a painting is a rag, just a basic shop rag. Don't use paper towels because the paper towels will come apart. In fact, the best type of rag are those made from torn up t-shirts, because those have very little lint left on them. If you're a messy person, you can wear latex gloves when you paint. That'll help keep things nice and handy and dry and clean, especially if you lean your hands on your stuff while you tend to paint. This will be a nice lifesaver for you. Wear an old shirt, you will get paint on you. There's nothing you can do about it. Wear an old shirt when you paint, or a smock or an apron or something to protect your clothing. Make sure you have a nice environment to paint in, which I will talk about briefly. As far as palettes go, I like the glass palette. The glass palette is eternal. Unless you drop it and break it, you can use this forever. When you're finished painting, you can just get a glass scraper, just like this, and just clean off your old paint. I haven't put a blade in this. If I had a blade in it, it would work much better. But the blade will just scrape the paint off the palette, get a little bit of solvent, clean off the rest of it, and you're good to go again. It's like getting a brand new palette. Plastic palettes, the paint will bind to it eventually, and it will just cause you misery and heartache, so don't use plastic palettes. We also can use disposable palettes, if we like. They come in little tablets like this. It's basically wax paper. So you can get a sheet and tear it out. It's slick on one side and matte on the other. The slick side is the one you want to mix your paint on, because that has the release on it. But these are great, and I use these sometimes too. You can paint, and then when you're done, instead of having to clean the glass palette, you just wad it up, throw it away, and go to the next one. Let's see. Oh, the last thing is one of the best things that I've discovered as a painter, and I highly recommend you get it. It's called a tube wringer. When we spend money on our oil paints, and they are hella expensive, we want to get every last drop out, and the tube wringer is the way to do that. Oh, sure. You can press it and mash it with your fingers as much as you want, but you're never going to get it all out. Oh, but the tube wringer. Oh, yes. You put your tube in there, and you squeeze these ends together as hard as you can, and you twist it. Look at that. It pushes all the leftover paint out, and you get every last drop. It saves your hands. It saves your wallet. Tube wringer. Get the tube wringer. And that's it for tools.